This episode of the podcast is brought to you by LeafWell.
Hello, Cannabinoid Connect listeners. Have you ever thought about getting a medical card? The process can be intimidating and hard to navigate. That's why I've partnered with LeafWell, the easiest and most affordable way to get a medical card in Texas and 32 other states in the U.S. LeafWell seamlessly connects you to a network of doctors that will help you get certified online in minutes. LeafWell is run by data scientists, cannabis specialists, and patient advocates that are passionate about increasing access and education around medical cannabis. LeafWell's patient support team is also there to support you throughout your entire journey using medical cannabis. As I've mentioned, I've partnered with LeafWell to provide all my listeners with a discount to become certified for medical cannabis. Simply go to their website at leafwell.com and use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical card. LeafWell only charges you if you get approved, so what do you have to lose? Visit their website at leafwell.com today and use the promo code CCTX to get certified for medical cannabis. Risk-free. Tamara Anderson, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing well. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast this evening.
We are excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you about the company you founded, Culinary and Cannabis. Seems very interesting, a very immersive, interactive cannabis event production company that we'll dive into later on. There's a lot of facets within it after I've been looking at your website. But I want to start with your background, Tamara. So, is there any kind of personal event or a certain interest that really sparked your journey, to found Culinary and Cannabis and get into the industry? And if so, what was that story? What was that trajectory like?
Oh, a lot of times people say your journey in life will lead you to your purpose, right? A lot of times they tell us that. And I think for a long time I was like, well, I've been journaling all this time and I still think didn't find my purpose. But when I, development of culinary and cannabis, I definitely found my purpose. I am, a registered nurse by career trade, been a pastry chef or cooking pastries for a very, very long time. As well as I recently realized I have been hosting events for forever.
And you're an event planner. You're everything.
All of that rolling into one has, I think made me a unique and perfect fit for, the brand, and also how I learned. I went to nursing school, which was the biggest anxiety for me, right? I haven't gone back, but it's because I don't learn by dictation, right? I don't learn by just sitting in a class and somebody, talking to me. Even when I think about it in high school, the classes where we got to do stuff, biology, all those classes, I did way better in those classes than English.
I have a sister that's so like that as well. Shout out to my sister Jen. So she's actually studying to be a teacher, and she said the same thing. She goes when I look back in high school, I wasn't that type of student that could just sit and absorb the information that they're just kind of teaching or they're putting on a chalkboard or having us read. I needed to be hands-on. I needed to learn with my hands and sensory. So that makes total sense. And I get that people are different, right? So it's great that you're able to fuse all of your experience, your background into where you're at today. So tell me a little more about that journey.
Well, it's been a very interesting journey and learning about myself along the way, right? But we started even when I was in nursing school. The first time that I seen cannabis used medicinally or even as a actual medicine, besides hearing, oh, it's good for cancer, it's good for this, but the first time I actually seen a prescription written for it and it being administered for a patient was probably my second clinical rotation, and this was 2007. And I worked at a skilled nursing facility, and I was on the dementia and Alzheimer's unit, and they used the patients Miranol and before breakfast and before lunch to get them to eat, because a lot of times patients with Alzheimer's or dementia, one, they either tell you, oh yes, I ate already, and they haven't eaten, or they don't have an appetite because they don't even remember to eat. So they were giving them Marinol to increase for appetite stimulation, right? But me literally watching and talking to the staff, they're like, watch so-and-so after 30, 45 minutes. Not only were they hungry, but their cognition was much more clear, and they were much more clear of like where they are, who they were, and what was going on when they took the Marinol. I'm like, we're not even, and this was like my first year in nursing, and I'm like, how come, first of all, what is happening?
Yeah.
And how come we're not learning about this in school? Like, it wasn't, even though it was a prescription at the time, we still weren't learning about it, right? We still didn't even learn about the whole endocannabinoid system. That wasn't even a topic or a subject. It was still drugs. This is bad for you if they smoke this much. And I'm in class like, I don't know what y'all talking about. I got friends that they smoked since they were 12 or 13 and it's perfectly fine, and they're employed and they're geniuses. So I was just like, whatever, that part, I don't know what that part is about. But so it's just those kind of things like that I think were all put into my life at certain times, so that when the opportunity became available for me to dip into this as a career, I was like, well, I've seen this before. I've seen that before. And my experiences and perspectives were different. So when the opportunity came arise, I was like, oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I love that. And I love that you kind of followed your instincts, right? Because there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of misinformation, as it relates to cannabis, particularly because of all the propaganda push that we've seen through prohibition over the years, right? I mean, there's been lobbyists and there's been, scientists that have been paid basically to write negative information and really focus on the adverse effects of cannabis, which of course there are, but they really zone in on that as opposed to talking about the other science, right? The endocannabinoid system and the health benefits that you're referring to. And it's amazing to me that, as a nurse, you're there, and it's almost like, you're seeing this Marinol and the benefits with these Alzheimer patients. And like, was it conversations with the nurses? It sounds like you're just like, oh my gosh, like, look at the night and day difference that you're seeing with these patients.
It wasn't even a conversation. It wasn't even a conversation in our class. Only conversation that I ended up having. So usually when you work in a skilled nursing facility, the nurse is the charge nurse. Then everybody else is the LVNs or CNAs, right? So the CNAs would be like, I had a good relationship with them because I would talk to them and talk about their experiences because they have the most hands-on with the patients, right? So I would be like, just talking up with them. Then they would be like, Tamara, watch this. I'll be like, what are you talking about? They're about to give this patient, and just watch what happens, right? So not even the nursing staff at the facility, it wasn't even a realization to them. And I think that's because the LVNs and CNAs were the ones that were feeding them, right? So they would physically see the change. With the nursing staff at the time, they weren't. They were just running everything and didn't have the time to like sit and watch and see the reaction. So I don't even know if those reactions got reported to the physicians, right? Because it's not necessarily something that you would document or that you would write down. You would just write down that you gave it to them and how much they ate, but right. Like their cognition changed. It wasn't part of what they call a SOAP. It wasn't part of what you had written down, but it was something that the staff themselves had realized, because they would have, when you're in a skilled nursing facility, a lot of those times those relationships are more intimate because they're older people. You talk to them, they want to have conversations with you. So if you're staffing, you're there all the time, you get to know them. So they literally would be like, I could have a conversation with so-and-so after they take the Marinol, because now they know where they're at. They know their history. They want to do those things. But it was not something that we talked about. And I went to school in 2006 to 2008, and I had ex-police officers in my class, ex-firefighters in my class, and it was not a subject that was talked about in a positive way at all.
Wow. And I can kind of sense the frustration in your voice, right? Like kind of experiencing that realization and being like, why aren't we, diving deeper into this plan and learning a bit more about the efficacy and how it can actually help these patients?
Right. Like, why aren't we doing more, especially with like things like autism, things that have to do with cognition, right? Because they can't take out your brain and research your brain and try to figure out how you can't. So that's why a lot of times when people have dementia or Alzheimer's or even autism, it either takes a really long time to diagnose them, but not only that, trying to figure out what works for them is difficult because it's not something you can extract and like see what happens. But to have a pill, a medicine, a plant that you can take and literally see somebody's their facial structure even changes because they become alert and aware to what is going on instead of just like lost and confused. So for me, I was just like, what the? Yeah.
Well, it's that sensory effect that cannabis gives, right? And I think that's a really perfect segue into culinary and cannabis, right? The company that you founded, because and correct if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's really on the premise of making people comfortable with working with cannabis, right? In a variety of different ways, whether it be cooking or online classes or modules. I mean, just all these different experiences where you're destigmatizing and you're educating. And I love that because that's exactly what this podcast is based on, right? Is just kind of undoing the lies that have been told over the past 100 years. So talk to me a little bit about the myriad of wellness applications that you've installed within culinary and cannabis and how that's working out.
Well, I consider us, you know how they say things are the gateway drug. I consider culinary and cannabis events the gateway to destigmatizing the plant. We are very, simple in our how we do things and how we approach things because we want everybody to be able to come in and learn something and ask a question. And people have different ways in which they enjoy anything, right? Even in which they learn, right? So all of our events, the majority or our cannabis events are all sensory. So we have massages, facials, mani-pedis, cooking classes, DIY topical classes, even down to like rolling classes or being able to like look at your flower and determine like, what kind of flower it could be, giving you guidelines on like, if you're just starting out with edibles, how much do you start? Where should you start at? What you should be looking at? Even to down to like when you go into a dispensary, what you should be asking them, what you should be asking for, because a lot of times too, when you go on dispensaries, right, this product will be there for 6 to 8 months. You like it, you love it, then it's gone. Right. So it's not necessarily the product, but what was in that product. What were the terpenes on that product? What kind of flower was in that product? What essential oils were in that product that made it so it worked for me and gave me whatever I was looking for? So we're kind of like the entryway for either those that are canna-curious or, have had cannabis maybe when they were younger and they're re-entering the market, or even a lot of times we have a lot of cannabis entrepreneurs that have no idea, like they want to get on the green rush, but they don't know exactly how to do that. Come to one of our events. I'm sure you will find something that you like, something that you enjoy, something that sparks your interest. And a lot of our brands that we work with are smaller mom and pop brands. They have no qualms about like sharing their information, sharing resources, helping you get into the space because there's not enough of us. We're still small. So like everything that we do has an education portion behind it, but I want to make it so that anybody, whatever you enjoy doing, whatever type of activities, we want to create something around that for you. So everybody has something and somewhere to go.
Yeah. See, and I love that. And that's really what sticks out to me as you explain, the company in more detail in that, I mean, cannabis itself has a lot of different consumers, right? From various backgrounds, different demographics. I mean, you've got young kids, you've got, middle-aged folks, you've got older people, right? That are consuming in a lot of different ways, different formats, if you will. So with you and the education that you're providing, with spa treatment and then, online classes or actually what you should ask in a dispensary. I mean, I would imagine you've got a lot of different interests from a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. Is that right?
Our audience is very vast. We have from young, old, experienced, non-experienced, Jewish, Asian, Black, Filipino. If you ever like our last event, if you just panned around and looked, you would be like, I can't. And everybody's enjoying themselves and getting along. Like we had a group of like rappers over here, YouTubers over here, moms over here, grandmothers over. I was just like, okay. And everybody is enjoying themselves, and they're also conversating and talking to each other and learning from each other. So it's a beautiful thing to see that, because a lot of times when I go to other events, it's usually one note.
Right.
That's all that I can say. There's one note. You either go to this event and this is what you're getting, or you go to this event and this is what you're getting. They're very, yeah.
I get that. Is there one particular like application within the program that seems to really work when it comes to destigmatizing the plant? Like you mentioned canna spa, right? Like a whole immersive spa experience all around cannabis. Is that something that's really brought more women into the fold, or at least gotten them more curious about the industry?
I would say our canna spot events and activations are our most frequent events, right? And you would be surprised, not only women, but men. A lot of times women will bring their partner with them, right? But then also teaching men to use cannabis for topicals versus just smoking. Like, okay, you go to play basketball. After you get done playing basketball, you need to run some of these topicals on top of you. Or if you get in an ice bath, you could put some hash in that ice bath and make it all the bit more. So it's, women are usually the ones who make the biggest purchase and the regular purchases in the home, right? So if you educate the woman or the female of the house, it's going to trickle down to the whole home. All the wellness, all that is going to trickle down to the whole house, right? So our focus is usually women, because they're the primary purchasers and decision makers in the house when it comes to healthcare and wellness, right? But they usually always bring their partner. And okay, I'm gonna go get a spa day, and I could go with her. Oh, and I can indulge. Oh yeah, I'm going.
Right. It's like a win-win. Like, why wouldn't they want to go, right? I mean, it sounds a lot more intriguing when you add cannabis and the consumption to it. And I couldn't agree more with you, Tamara. Like, really educating the female base, I think, is really important for the movement overall, right? Not only because of the reasons you mentioned, right? Because they really own kind of what's purchased and regularly bought within the house. At least that's the case in my house with my wife, right? She knows what we're purchasing, and so that makes a lot of sense. But also, like, from a destigmatization standpoint, I mean, there's a lot of health benefits, right, as it relates to cannabis therapeutics and women's health. Talk to me a little bit about, the responses that you get from these women that join these activities, and, what is their reaction when they hear how, CBD can help with their menstrual cycle or other, different women related issues that traditional medicine just doesn't.
So I can tell you one of the most impactful stories or relationships that I have. Somebody that has been my friend since I was in the ninth grade. That's a really long time. Since I was in the ninth grade. She recently called me because she got diagnosed with breast cancer, right? But this is also somebody that's active in my community, that has supported and came to events. But when she was like, what should I do? What should I that? So we came up with like a regimen of things for her to take and things for her to do for herself, right? And it just, I think her experience she was already a consumer, but her experience with the plant and going through that and going through radiation and going through chemo, I think was a softer landing for her. One, because she had the support of knowing that she had somebody to reach out about the plant and what she can and cannot do. But not only that, like, I've heard effects from other women, from having mastectomies and those kind of things. And they have some of them have really bad horror stories. And her story wasn't that, because she was taking RSO 1-to-1, applying topicals. She did like a whole regimen. one that we came up, but I think that her experience with that, one, she wants to share that experience. But two, I think that we will get to the point where we will have, I can't remember what they're called, but in healthcare, we have these care plans, right? We have care plans. If you get like a hip replacement, you should be up and walking by this time. You should be walking at this distance. And once you get there, then they will release you. I think that the plant and the way that I have seen the plant work, we will have care plans that include the plant, right? That will show enhancement in recovery, enhancement in improvement in life. And I foresee that down the line as something that we will do. It's just, I think it will be a while, but I think that people even trying and testing it out on their own and creating testimonies, telling their doctors and telling their physicians, I think is also very important. Like, I think if you're using the plant, don't be afraid to have a discussion with your physician about it. And if your physician doesn't agree with you, or at least want to listen to what you're having to say, you need to go get another physician.
Yeah, no, that's really sound advice. And it's such a great kind of roadmap for what you're planning, because it makes sense with your nursing background, right? Just kind of applying a regimen, a playbook, basically for patients to follow to really start to see the results and the benefits of using the plant the right way, right? As it relates to dosage or the formulation that you're consuming. So let's dive a bit deeper into that. Like, are you bringing in healthcare professionals or advocacy groups to kind of collaborate in this education approach? And if so, like, how are they, working with you, and how's that playing out?
So depending on like what we're doing or what type of event we are or what subject or topic we're having, we will bring in experts. Like, so even when we did like our DIY boxes, right? Like, we had a class where we talked about saging, which is not necessarily a part of cannabis, right? But a lot of people in the cannabis space, or our audience, are all about wellness, holistic medicine, all those kind of things, spirituality. So one of those things is saging. So we had somebody that came in and taught about the significance of saging and the history of saging and how you should truly be doing that. We have had massage therapists come in and they talk about using the products and the benefits of using them. We've had nutritionists come on, and nutritionists talk about, like, eating in the right times to eat it and what that does to your body and what it does to muscle. So depending on what we're doing, we do have experts that come in and provide education and services. I work a lot with the Cannabis Nurses of Color, is another organization that I work a lot with. And they literally have nurses that will come in and you can do like a consultation with them. They'll go over drugs interactions for you if you are like newly diagnosed with cancer, or you have a child on autism. They'll go over meds that you already have, give recommendations for plants. So, we have a variety of ways in which we could supply the information to you. But again, I never want our event. I want our events to be educational and entertaining, but I never want you to feel like you're stuffy or like it's being pushed down your throat. I want it to be something that you're intrigued about so much that you come asking for the information and come asking for more. But we do have people in all sectors and professions that will come in and provide education depending on what we're doing.
That's great. And is that accessible like nationwide, or do you really just working with healthcare professionals in the California area which you're located?
No, it depends. First of all, it's not enough in California, and it depends on where they are. Like our expert on sage, I think she was from Seattle. Our beard girl's from like Miami. Our esthetician is in Florida. So half of them are not even here, right? We have to go find them where they're at and present and bring them. So but there's not enough in California for it just to be California based. Not yet.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, all this sounds great, Tamara. What is, like, in a perfect ideal world, where do you see culinary and cannabis, in the future? Let's say 3 to 5 years. Like, where do you want to be, and what will the focus be?
So in 3 to 5 years, I see us having brick and mortar canna spas, which for me not only includes like the spa services, but also wellness. nutrition. We'll have like cooking classes, topical classes, but it'll all be in one space. We'll also have like a sports medicine section for athletes and those kind of things. So in my world, in the next 3 to 5 years, I see us having maybe 3 or 4 of those in centralized locations. But also continuing to spread our Canna Spa events to other places outside of California, because I think that they need the experience and the education more than we need it in California. So I would really like to be able to produce events in other states, especially states that are like newly legalized and that kind of thing. Because just because you've been smoking weed or getting weed wherever you've been getting it from for the last 50 or 60 years, it's totally different when your state goes legal and you start to have dispensaries and you start to have all these things. It's like, some people don't know, they don't even know what to go in and ask. They don't have, they have no idea. So we want to be that introduction for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I can see that you're well on your path to getting there, with the focus and discipline that you've already implemented and all that you've done at this point. I did want to ask you, how are you sourcing your flower? Like for like some of these activations where you have, say, like, culinary or fine dining experiences, how do you go about sourcing the product to cook with that?
First of all, we are a non-plant touching business. Usually,
Non-plant touching. Okay.
Usually, depending on where we are, we will have a brand sponsor or somebody that sponsor, because first of all, I want whoever our audience to be able to source it locally, right? So THC, cannot pass over state lines. So depending on where we are, it's sourced from directly wherever we are. If there's a brand there that has like a cooking oil or has like a drink or sugar or a seasoning, we try to show people how to cook with that first. But we also have done classes with the magical butter machine, right? Where we will go and get some hash or get some flour and teach people how to make butter in real time. Like we'll start out teaching them, showing them how to use it. And then in the interim, we'll cook like a family style meal together with things that are already prepared. And then by the end of the class, we'll show them, well, like it's sitting here for an hour and a half. And now this is what we have. We'll measure it to do the calculation to show them how much, the butter is in there. But a lot of times for our classes, they're regular people, right? So we want to be able to show you how to make things in a safe and easy way. So the best way for us to do that a lot of times is with products that are already pre-made and pre-measured, which is easier for people, right? Because if you're serious about it, you'll approach me and we'll have a whole nother personal class for that. But for our general classes, we like to make it easy for people as possible, because I don't want you to go home and you take too much cannabis and then you're laid out on the floor and you're like, well, you taught me in class. No, I taught you to take 1 tablespoon because that was 10 milligrams, not a whole cup. I'm very big on trying to teach the regular consumer how to use products, but locally sourced products so that they can go and get those products from there. But also so it helps those products, because a lot of times edibles and things that you cook with are not as popular in dispensaries. But I think that's because a lot of dispensaries don't take advantage of the opportunities to be able to teach the consumer how to use them or even let them know that they're there.
Right. It's so important because, I mean, they could be detractors at the same time too, right? You got a bad experience and they never want to come back. They'll say, oh no, cannabis is not for me. I'm just not, I tried it once. And well, it's like, you didn't try it the right way because you took way too much, and inevitably that's going to happen, especially with edibles, which is a whole other ball game compared to, inhaling or through smoke consumption. Exactly. So exactly. Well, this has been very, very informative and insightful, Tamara. I really appreciate your time. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up here?
Just to make sure to follow us at culinarycannabis.com, and also follow us on our new website called canna-parties.com, is where people can order our Canna Spa services. You can order them to come to your home. So we will come set up a whole infused spa party for you and your girls for your birthday, bachelorette party, girls' night in. Let us do that for you. Let us pamper you cannabis style.
Treat yourself, ladies. You heard it from Tamara, and I'll be sure to put the links in the YouTube description box so you can easily find all the different places that Tamara was calling out. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Yes. And thank you all for listening. Bye.